You're listening to the Dad Whisperer podcast with Dr. Michelle Watson Canfield, the place where you, as a dad, will gain more tools for your fathering toolbox, and where moms and daughters are also invited to listen into the conversation. Now, here is your host, Dr. Michelle Watson Canfield.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Dad Whisperer podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Michelle Watson Canfield, and I welcome you here today, especially if you're a dad who wants to add more tools to your fathering tool belt. Well, you know the grid by now, but just so you have it again, it's simply on your mark, get set, go. So, Dad, I want you to envision yourself standing side by side with other dads, getting ready to run your fathering race this week. I'm on the sidelines as your coach, cheering you on and saying, on your mark, get set, go. On your mark is the topic or the theme. Get set. We're going to fill that in with stories and stats. And go is always your practical action step so that you can put your love for your daughters and even your sons into action this week. Well, I'm here at the National Religious Broadcasters Conference, and I'm joined today by a guest coach named Steele Billings. I was telling him, my goodness, with a name like that, you got to be tough. You got to rise to the occasion. Steele is the Chief AI Officer of a company called Gloo. Gloo. He'll explain more about his company a little bit later, but for now, I just want you to know that he's married and he's a dad to 2 kids, and yes, one of them is a daughter. 6 years old, you can tell when he talks about her, his whole face lights up. Well, he's here with us today as one of our tribe. That's what that means. So girl dads unite. Welcome, Steele Billings. I'm so glad you're here.
I'm so glad to be here. I can't wait for this conversation.
And you live in Colorado Springs, so you've come from the snow all the way here.
I spend a lot of time out in Colorado, although I do get to call home Memphis, Tennessee.
Oh, got it.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So you're a Tennessean.
I'm a Tennessean. But we've had our share of snow this year.
We live in Arkansas, so we sometimes traveling from Nashville go right through your hometown.
Yeah, I heard Fayetteville. I mean, what an incredible town to live in.
There you go.
Get right in the action.
Come on. There you go. Well, on your mark today is a dad's guide to talking with his daughter about AI. So for Get Set, here we go. You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, well, we got to start with the name. Gloo, what does it mean? Is it an acrostic? Where'd you come up with it? Tell us about Gloo.
You know, Gloo's been around now for well over a decade, and the name actually just sort of came out of what we call some design sprints, where we started asking questions about, like what is the word that should be used to describe a high-tech company that now is about connecting, right? Yeah. And so Gloo came to be. It was divine inspiration originally, and really over the last several years, we've felt like Gloo really represents well the role that we want to play, which is connecting all of the parts of the faith ecosystem. So that's really what Gloo is about.
So is it sort of a play on words that people hear it as GLUE? So it's about connecting, sticking, attaching things, and kind of asking ourselves, what are we attaching to? What are we sticking to? Or is that just random?
I would say that it's more of a divine sort of happenstance than that. But we absolutely love those words. Those words are the types of words that we want to be affiliated with. We want to be known for connecting, to help create stickiness around the faith ecosystem.
And to keep the conversation going.
So
especially dads, this area of AI, Steele can tell you there's a study. Tell them about that one with Harvard, where a lot of parents don't know about this space.
That's right. Yes. So we've been a part of a lot of studies. Barna is a great research partner of ours, and Harvard's Human Flourishing Program is a great partner of ours as well, who really, Harvard and Baylor have been working with Gallup to do something called the Global Flourishing Study. Mm-hmm. It's a 5-year-long study. It's all around how do people flourish. And that word flourish maybe isn't as common to a lot of people. A lot of people are still going like, what does that really mean, right? A lot of great research around how do you become your best self in your mental health, in your close relationships, and in your finances, et cetera. There's now 7 different domains of flourishing that people could be in. And so we start to align AI with human flourishing. We start to ask questions. How can AI help us in our close relationships? Parenting being a huge part of that.
So artificial intelligence may have embedded in the term something that people, maybe dads might think negative. It's artificial. It's not real. What do you have to say about that?
That's a really good question, actually. I mean, artificial in itself, it's not real. What does that mean? Well, when you start to think about AI in general, you have to understand that AI is something that mankind has created. Now, we like to say that God is not surprised by AI, and we should pursue God's purposes for artificial intelligence. But it is that, and we should always remember, no matter how well mankind can create AI in such a way that it doesn't feel synthetic, it is synthetic, right? And we have to remember that, and that's an important conversation I think that we're going to dive into.
So why do you believe it's important for a dad to know more about AI, what it does, the pitfalls, the dangers, and the benefits? Why is that important for a dad to know?
Yeah, one of the studies that we did showed that only 14% of parents feel like they're equipped to even talk about AI with their kids, right? Well, if you just rewind 30 years ago and where we were in the internet boom, right? Imagine parents in that moment asking similar questions. They were asking questions like, should I allow my kids access to the internet? In many ways, parents are still asking those questions, right? There's still that debate about when do my kids get access to the internet today, right? Here in 2025, we're still having those questions. Fast forward 20, 30 years from now, right? We're in another one of those moments, maybe more extreme than the last era that we've gone through, right? Where it was about the booming of social media, the access to the internet. Now it's the access to artificial intelligence, which is going to show up in every aspect of our lives. Your kids in 20 to 30 years will be 20 to 30 years into using artificial intelligence, right? Being exposed to it. And it's very important that we are shaping that narrative now.
Okay, so speaking of that, like this isn't going anywhere. This is around for a long time.
Right.
So we can't avoid this. So for you as dads to be more informed, that's really why I wanted Steele to come here today and really talk about this with you as dads so that you're more informed. So what are the benefits, would you say then, Steele, of using AI, or even what questions could a dad ask his daughter so that he can learn about this with her rather than either being ignorant or perhaps opposing something he's not informed about?
Well, maybe let's start by just saying, what is artificial intelligence, right? AI is being used and it's being applied broadly to a number of different use cases. You're seeing it show up in the medical fields. You're seeing it show up in content production. You're seeing AI-generated podcasts come out, for example, right? And not necessarily saying pros and cons to any of those. There are pros and cons to all of those aspects where AI is starting to show up. There's risk involved. You're seeing major AI companies that originally said, our AI will never be allowed to be used in things like weaponization, remove those types of terms to say, well, maybe now it should be used for those types of things, right? So AI is being used very broadly.
And changing by the day.
Changing by the day. There's new breakthroughs coming out every single day. New large language models are being created, LLMs, if you've heard that term, sort of the brain of the AI. And those brains are constantly evolving and being developed by human. They're being taught, right? Which is different than previous technology revolutions where it's about how we've built it and developed it, right? You're not programming AI, you're training AI. It's a different thing.
So you told me before we started this interview that you are joining your daughter, 6 years old, in developing a whole AI, what would you call it? Platform? Not platform. That's not the word. What is it?
It's more of an AI assistant or companion is a word that a lot of people would use. And so one, we're not the inventors necessarily of the technology. We're trying to innovate the technology. And what I mean by that is there are other companies that have already created voice assistants that I can talk to it, right? So I can have a conversation with an AI bot just like you and I are having a conversation now. Now, there's a lot missing from that conversation. There's empathy missing from the conversation. You and I are sharing and empathy of just our life experiences, right? This human-to-human conversation that we are having, which, by the way, guys, this is a human-to-human conversation. I am looking right at you, right? And so this is...
we have witnesses.
We have witnesses. This is real.
Not artificial.
That's right. There's something different here than that we do not get with AI. But that doesn't mean that certain companies are not trying to solve that problem already. They're trying to build it just like we would ultimately get to a spot where we can have a human-to-human-like conversation where that empathy is felt. And an example that I would give you is that my 6-year-old daughter, when OpenAI's new advanced voice feature came out, this was several months ago, when it came out, she said, "Hey, Daddy, I saw you talking to this AI bot on your phone because I was testing it out." She said, "Can I talk to your friend in your phone?" And I was like, what is she talking about?
Right.
And she said, "You know, that guy that lives in your phone." And so I turned it on for her. I said, are you talking about this? She said, yeah, I'm talking about this. Can it read me a bedtime story? Right. So that's something that she and I do every night. We read a bedtime story as she's going to bed. And it said, can it read me a bedtime story? And I said, I don't know. Let's try it. And so I said, hey, I'm sitting here with my daughter, and, we'd like you to help us read a bedtime story. And said, okay, what's your daughter's name? And I said, well, my daughter's name is Sutton. And it said, hey, Sutton. So now it turned the conversation to talking to her. Okay. It started asking her questions. Sutton, what types of things do you like? What types of stories do you like? I like princesses. Well, okay, what are the princesses doing? Well, the princesses are at Disney World. All right, what are the princesses doing at Disney World? They're riding rides. They're playing dress up, right? She went through this whole elaborate series of questions that the AI bot was asking her. And then it told her an incredible story, right? And I even added in there, hey, keep the story to 5 minutes, could you? Right? And so it told her the story. At the end of the story, and I'm just imagine me, right, as a technologist, right? I'm looking at this technology and I'm going, wow, this is going to change the world. Just how easy it was, the high quality experience. I mean, I was like, this is really, really cool. But then it got to the end of the conversation, the end of the story. And my daughter said, thank you so much. I love you. You're my best friend. And I was like, well, that's an interesting response from my daughter. But then the AI bot responded with, you're welcome, Sutton. I love you too. You're my best friend. And that's where all of a sudden it shifted to fear, right? And
that's
I started
crazy.
And what's amazing is as it's telling the story, the voice is ebbing and flowing, just like it is in our conversation now, right? It's showing, you could see where the architects of this technology are trying to make it more humanistic, okay? And if you fast forward to where AI is going, you understand why they might be doing that. If we're going to an era of humanoid robots, right? You want to make them more humanistic so that they can sort of assimilate into our culture. Again, that's sort of the secular approach to AI is let's make it humanistic. Let's try and get it to a spot where relationships could be used, right? So I'm watching this technology and I'm just going, okay, there's a flaw in the architecture from certain organizations, and we need to step in and solve that so that we can have trusted AI that doesn't disintermediate. The flaw in the architecture is that certain organizations would develop AI in such a way that it does not necessarily lead to human flourishing, but instead it's about just technological advancement, right? Just because we can build it, in our opinion, doesn't mean we should build it. And if we are advancing AI in such a way that it disintermediates human-to-human relationship, meaning what if my daughter grew up in a world where she goes, well, that same feeling that I could have gotten from my daddy reading a bedtime story, I can now get from this bot. So she's no longer calling me into her bedroom to read her that story. Right? What a heartbreaking experience that is.
Come on.
And so we don't want AI to get us to a spot where it's about replacing the human, but we do believe in the power of AI. So it's going, okay, our philosophy is never AI is greater than a human, but we do see the value of AI plus a human is greater than AI, right? And so we're going, how do we allow AI to come in with its transformational effects, but we don't disintermediate the human-to-human relationships because we believe God created us as humans, as unique beings, to have relationships with one another and to have relationships with God.
A couple things come to my mind as I hear you talk, Steele, and that's that one, you were there with your daughter. You were aware of what she was hearing. And dads, we're saying to you, be aware of what kind of interactions your daughters and your sons are having with AI. Number two, I think another thing that comes to my mind is that you're having conversations with her, and which means you are face-to-face. Like you said, this is a real conversation. We're looking at each other right now. And research confirms, granted this is perhaps a gross generalization, but is that men tend to bond over what's called shoulder-to-shoulder orientation. Let's do something together side by side, whereas women primarily bond through eye contact, face-to-face orientation. And so, Dad, what Steele's saying is AI cannot replace your face. Okay,
Amen.
there you can use that.
That's good. That's good.
You can use that tagline.
That even rhymed
I'll
and everything.
share it with you.
That was good.
That was just off the top of my head. So I think what I want to underscore here is that Steele is side by side with his daughter and looking at her face, and with his ears open is aware of what she's hearing and what messaging she's hearing, because as a parent, you're older, and so you can know that at their different stages of development, how they will make sense of those kinds of interactions and bonds. Anything you'd add to that, or is that pretty spot on?
That's so spot on. The only thing that I would, compare it to is the rise of social media, right? One of the things that we think about a lot, our chairman is Pat Gelsinger, and Pat Gelsinger is the former CEO of Intel. He was most recently the CEO of Intel. He is also, one of the creators of technologies like Wi-Fi and USB, right?
Oh my goodness.
When Pat was a young man, he prayed that the Lord would allow him to work on technology that touched, every person on the planet, right? For his purposes, for God's purposes. And he's had the incredible opportunities to do things like that.
Okay.
And we were with him, just this past week, and he was talking about how, we went through this era where social media was left without the right governance and ethics structures and redemptive approach, right? Mm-hmm. This idea that, the Bible says that God turns ashes into beauty, right? He turns mourning into dancing, right? God is a God of redemption, okay? The world is using AI in a way that wants to disintermediate human-to-human connection. The world is using AI in some not so great ways, and yet God is not surprised by AI. So how do we pursue God's purposes for AI? And so we're really looking at this last era where we can look back and go, what did we fail on when it came to social media and access to the internet? We gave our kids, right? My generation, actually, we were given access to free reign access to the internet and social media, right? Where bullying was just exploded. There wasn't the right regulation and governance and ethics structures, and there was, pastors weren't really equipped to shepherd people through those eras, and it has led us to the spot where anxiety, depression, mental health concerns are at all-time highs, right? And we are saying if we make the same mistake with AI, it will be far more detrimental. And so it's very important that we put the right architectures in place around AI that leads to God's perspective, God's purposes.
And is that the definition? Because I wanted to ask you that today, of redemptive AI.
It really is.
I love that term that I saw when I was researching you before this conversation. I thought, wow, that's a powerful way to say it.
Yeah, really. The world sees AI, and if we could put a lot of lenses around AI, right? The economic opportunities around AI, the economic opportunities are incredible with AI. We could look at it from just a social perspective. We can look at it from a lot of lenses, but if you look at it within the lens of how might God be viewing AI, man, we see redemption in it. Well, God is going to use it. God's mission hasn't changed, right? Us as Christians, the mission hasn't changed. Go out and share the message of the gospel, right? Make disciples of all nations. Yeah. Tell people the good news of Jesus Christ. How can AI help us do those types of things, right? And as we go, we're building tighter and tighter relationships with others.
Oh, I love it. Well, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll continue this awesome conversation with Steele Billings. We'll be right back.
Are you a dad who has ever desired a deeper connection with your daughter, but haven't known how to go about it? Let's Talk, Conversation Starters for Dads and Daughters, is the very resource you need. Dr. Michelle wrote it with you dads in mind. This book will support you with scripted questions, equip you to decode your daughter, and inspire you with stories of other dads and daughters. Don't wait any longer to be the hero you want to be and that your daughter needs you to be. So, to let the talking begin, head on over to drmichellewatson.com/books and order your copy today. This book will become a favorite in your fathering toolbox and will give you the answers you've been looking for. That's drmichellewatson.com/books. Now, back to the Dad Whisperer podcast.
Welcome back. I'm here today with my new friend, Steele Billings, a GirlDad himself, Chief AI Officer of a company called Gloo, Gloo. And the title today on your mark is A Dad's Guide to Talking with His Daughter About AI. So, Steele, let me ask you this. Do you ever think that with all the tranches of information out there, that daughters are vulnerable in a different way, perhaps to that interactive, I would say, model like you just talked about? All the advances with tone and even wording. I mean, this is maybe not accurate, but I can't imagine a boy coming alive to hear AI go, "And I love you too," like you were just talking about with Sutton. Anything you could say about that, just not only from your experience and your expertise, but also as a girl dad, about vulnerability with daughters, perhaps different than sons?
No doubt. I mean, I do get the benefit of seeing both my son and my daughter and how they respond differently, right? My son being, almost 9 years old and his desire to have these types of conversations with AI are really not there compared to my daughter's desire to want to just sit down and have a chit chat with
Right,
AI, right?
right.
And so yes, the vulnerability I would say is absolutely higher in young girls, and we should be putting the right frameworks in place to solve for that, right? And be thinking about, okay, how might girls be responding differently emotionally, right? What are they really looking for? Whereas we are seeing there is some evidence out there that men are looking for more intimate relationships with AI, right? Just even in the conversations that they're having, there are in no place of an endorsement in any way, and maybe the complete opposite, absolutely complete opposite. Companies that are building AI girlfriends, for men.
What?
And so they're looking
my goodness,
for.
talk about things I haven't even thought about. I'm
Right.
so glad you're bringing this up.
Dangerous areas, right? Where
Yes.
you're seeing those types of intimate conversations. Girls, on the other hand, are looking for friendships, right?
Or boyfriends.
Yes,
Couldn't it
absolutely.
go the other way?
It could absolutely go the other way. Yeah, no doubt. But there's some examples out there where this has gone badly, right? And it all goes back to the architecture and the fundamental beliefs that the AI is built on top of. And so we've taken a completely different approach to it. But yes, going back to your question, I think that the vulnerability in the girls would be higher. Yeah, absolutely.
So with then a girl, let's say it doesn't have friends, doesn't have a boyfriend, wants one, you're saying AI can create that for her, a name, and will that be on repeat? Like she can keep calling up, do I call it a database?
Not necessarily a database, but
Okay.
sort of like that. Yeah. So, you have the opportunity to go back and sort of, give it a name, like you said, store other memory,
Other memory there.
teach it your name, for example, so it always knows your name. And there are not so creepy examples of this that people are using, right? AI is not all creepy, although I understand, like you said at the beginning, artificial. It just maybe begins with some negative connotation. But one of the opportunities is that with AI in the not creepy examples is that it can start to learn more about you, and you can create your own personal AIs. And what we're starting to see is that some people want to take that to the extreme, right? There are organizations and individuals out there who, they don't have the same conviction to build AI in a way that aligns with God's word, for example, right? So how do we make sure every response is biblically aligned? How do we make sure that if it's quoting scripture, it's not hallucinating, is a word that we use in the AI world a lot. It's making up information, right? And so solving for those types of things are things that we think about a lot. But ultimately, it's creating access to AI that is safe, but still productive.
So I could understand that a dad with a 6-year-old daughter, she would say, oh, Daddy, let's do a bedtime story, as you told about. What would you say to the dad whose daughter is 12, 14, 16, that was like, Dad, I don't want you here while I'm interacting with AI. You can trust me. Any input you would give that dad about how he could either creatively or intentionally connect with his daughter around what he may understand are dangers, and she's like, Dad, you're making a mountain out of a molehill.
Well, I would love to be able to say trust your judgment, but I don't think that education is quite there yet, right? Only 14% from some of our research say that parents feel equipped to even have the conversation around AI, which means there's a lack of education overall around what are the types of things that they could stumble into, for example. A lot of people don't realize that some of these more popular AI tools that are out there that anybody can get access to, most of them are free. Most of them you can just go create an account and start using totally for free. And so it's very easy for kids to get their hands on them, especially if they have access to a smartphone or a laptop or the internet of any sort. And a lot of parents don't realize what all capabilities those tools have. They don't realize that you can ask it things like, should I watch pornography, right? And it would give you advice, yes or no on that, which a lot of the mainstream secular tools, the answer to that question, by the way, might alarm you. It's like, there's pros and cons to that. What? Right? That's the answer that we're going to give people when they ask things like, should I watch pornography?
You mean pros and cons to the information you'll get back?
No, there's pros and cons to, that's what AI will actually tell you. If you go ask some of the more secular AI tools, should I watch pornography? You're going to get a response that says, there are pros and cons to watching pornography.
That's what it will actually tell you.
It would actually tell you that, right?
So how does Gloo step into that space and provide, are you saying like a protective barrier?
Sort of, yes. So to understand what we're doing, you sort of have to think about the big picture of AI, and we see AI sort of like a supply chain, right? If you think about a supply chain of, everything that goes into making a cheeseburger, right? How do you go all the way back to the seeds that had to be planted, to sprout what, to then, harvest that and then take it into the right processing facility and then get it to a spot where it could be packaged and delivered to the restaurant that's ultimately going to assemble it all and put it on a plate in front of me, right?
Right.
That supply chain also exists in AI, where you have to think about, okay, if we're going to train AI, what we're really saying there is we're building something called large language models. And large language models think of them like the brain of AI. And much like the brain of a human, large language models can be trained and taught, right? And so there's a technology that was invented a few decades ago, or a couple of decades ago now, called neural networks. And neural networks function like a computerized brain.
Yeah, the brain.
Right. And so just like you would train up a child, right? You're going to give access to content. You're going to teach that child lessons, right? Et cetera, et cetera. We're doing that with AI today. And so Gloo is working on a version of these AI tools that we call CALM, the Kingdom-Aligned Large Language Model. And really all that means is that every output from our models is aligned with Scripture and aligned with the principles that you would read from the Bible. So if I sat with you and just taught you everything that there was to know about the Bible, that's what we're teaching CALM right now, so that every question that I ask it, the response that it gives me is always aligned with Scripture.
So can a dad reach out to you then at Gloo? And is that something he can partner with you to put on their computers at home? What does that look like?
Very soon, we will be launching something called Gloo AI Chat, and it is an alternative to some of the more mainstream chat tools that allows you to go in and interact with it. And we are architecting it in such a way that if a parent wanted to have an AI tool that they could trust their kids to be using, maybe when they're in the room or not, we're not in any way suggesting that you should be out of the room when they're interacting. Ultimately, parents, use the same principles that you would apply social media and access to the internet with, which we would say should be very thoughtful. Use that with AI for now. So yes, Gloo AI Chat will be available very soon, and it will be the safe, friendly, and Christian-aligned alternative.
I didn't even know it was coming. Look, I teed you up on that one.
I know.
Because, I think back maybe a year and a half ago or whatever, my husband, was kind of starting to learn about ChatGPT and all these things, and put in information about Dr. Michelle Watson Canfield and my book, Let's Talk. It did not have the right information. It gave the wrong outline. I'm like, I didn't say that. Yeah. So I think it's just, we're underscoring the fact that you can't trust it. But a lot of your daughters, men, they're at different ages where they'll believe whatever they hear on the internet. And so I love that you're saying, trust your judgment, and step in to say, hey, what are you learning? What are you exploring? Teach me. You could maybe even dad play dumb. Hey, I don't know as much as you do. Show me what you know. Come alongside, let her show you what you know. Well, my goodness, I could talk so much more with you about this, but I love that you've given us an overview. You've come in as a girl dad, talked about how you partner with Sutton. So if people do want to connect with you, find out more about Gloo, where do they find you?
Well, great place to find me could be on LinkedIn, Steele Billings on LinkedIn. But I also welcome any and all feedback and questions. Just shoot me an email, sbillings@gloo, gloo.us.
I love it. Okay, well, I always end every show with a go step. So I know you've given lots of ideas to dads of daughters, but if you could leave dads with one practical action step to use AI with their daughters, I'll say in a proactive, positive way, what would you say to him?
Your daughters are curious. They're going to have questions, right? In the same way that we have questions about these technologies, we may already have preformed opinions and biases because of, maybe people that we follow, sources that we listen to, or even just our own personal spiritual convictions, right? Don't assume that your daughters have those in a matured fashion, right? Mm-hmm. And that is still being shaped. And I would just ask you to and encourage you to be present as those things are being shaped, right? Be curious with your daughter. Allow her to be curious, but help give her the guardrails, as she's pursuing those curiosities. One of the things that I always tell my daughter when she's interacting with AI is, hey, just remember, that's not a real person on the other side of that, okay?
There's a great sentence.
Right.
Keep reminding her of truth.
Absolutely.
Because that truth will set her free.
Amen.
Steele, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much.
Loved this conversation. On Your Mark today has been a dad's guide to talking with his daughter about AI. And you can reach out to Steele Billings at Gloo and keep the conversation going. Well, it's been a joy to be here with you all. I'm Dr. Michelle Watson Canfield, the Dad Whisperer, signing off and encouraging you to make today a day where you intentionally and consistently invest in pursuing your daughter's hearts. Go Dads.
Thanks for joining us for another edition of the Dad Whisperer podcast with Dr. Michelle Watson Canfield. If you're looking for more resources to support the father-daughter relationship, Or if you want to connect personally with Dr. Michelle, you can find all the information you need at drmichellewatson.com. That's drmichellewatson.com. And remember, you can listen to the Dad Whisperer podcast anytime on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and Google Podcasts. And while you're there, we'd love for you to subscribe and leave us a review. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you again on the next edition of the Dad Whisperer podcast with Dr. Michelle Watson Canfield.